Thank you, Pat, not only for those kind words, but for all that you're doing, particularly in this area of regional development that is so important to all of us. Retreat Week is always a big week for the Institute of Politics, but this was a big week for the Institute even before today arrived. I say that because yesterday we released both the lead-free demolition guidelines developed by our lead-safe demolition working group and the second report of the Criminal Justice Reform Progress Panel that is focused on incarceration policies and practices here in Allegheny County. Many of the people who contributed mightily to the development of those two important documents are here today, and I do want to thank and congratulate you for reaching an important milestone. And as if that was not enough, now we get to spend a couple of days with all of you. Pat made reference to the 23rd annual elected officials retreat. I don't think I was present at the first, and I'm trying to figure out mathematically how that might have been possible, but Paul Supowitz probably knows. I think it was kind of a small ragtag group of people who gathered in the Chancellor's office. And then the next time around, we started building, and we've been building and building, and my sense is that we have had groups of this size before. But I mean it when I say that I don't think we have ever assembled a group of this quality before. As I looked over the list of registrants and made note of the positions that you hold and the work that you do, I really was both impressed and encouraged. It's great to have you all in the same room, interested in topics that are so important to the future of the region. Having introduced the Chancellor, I do also want to make quick note of some of the other people who are participating in this year's retreat, including Eva Bloom, the chair of the university's Board of Trustees, as well as trustees Jay Costa, Rich Fitzgerald, who is our principal partner on the incarceration work and on a number of other things, and Tommy Johnson, as well as former trustees Morgan O'Brien and Dan Honorato. Members of the Chancellor's leadership team who are here include Ann Cudd, the provost, Senior Vice Chancellor Kathy Humphrey, and Vice Chancellor Paul Supowitz, who is well known to many of you because his day job really is forging important community and governmental relations. I even think back to bygone days, and I see my old internal partner, Provost Emeritus Jim Marr, and my old external partner, President Emeritus from Carnegie Mellon, Jerry Cohen. One thing we did not anticipate was that the speaker would hold his chamber in session in Harrisburg today. That's not a very neighborly gesture to start with. But what that means is that we will not begin hearing from the House side of the General Assembly until tomorrow, when we will have both former Majority Leader, now appearing in a new role of well-heeled banker, Dave Reed, here, as well as Jake Wheatley, whose district is kind of just outside this window. And we have a star-studded cast from the Senate. This afternoon, we'll have a chance to hear from Senator Camara Bartolotta, from the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Joe Scarnati, from the Minority Leader, Jay Costa, and tomorrow morning, the Majority Leader, Jake Corman, will be with us. The roster of registrants also includes a who's who from the Regional Foundation community. We welcome you and extend particularly warm thanks for the generous support that you have provided to the Institute throughout its 3 decades of existence. This past year, as the Chancellor already has suggested, was a time of challenge and of change because we lost in different ways 2 outstanding leaders. We do continue to mourn the passing of Mo Coleman, the founding director of the Institute of Politics, who was beloved in this community and viewed by most of us as the perfect combination of an extraordinary servant leader and a person who possessed all of the very best human qualities that a person could hope for. And we will have a chance to reflect a little bit more on Mo at the dinner this evening. I'd only say that, you know, when the Institute of Politics is functioning at its best, it simply is living up to the inspiring example that was set by Mo. During the past year, we also lost Terry Miller, who had been our director, this time to retirement. That was her decision, and it was the right decision. If any of you doubt that it was the right decision, check with me later, and I will show you the email that I got from Terry this morning, sending her best wishes to all of you as she boarded a plane to Italy. But Terry had been with the Institute for 25 years. She had served as director for 10 years. She too was really a one-of-a-kind leader, and we miss her even as we continue to build on her work. I knew that when we began a search for Terry's replacement, we were going to attract a very strong pool of exceptional candidates for what is a truly distinctive position. I was right, and from that very strong pool, we recruited an absolutely outstanding successor to Terry. And I'm referring to Samantha Balbier, who is sitting in the front row. She had most recently served as the executive director of the Greater Pittsburgh Nonprofit Partnership and earlier held a range of important positions with important organizations, including the Heinz Endowments and Allegheny County. I have been working with Sam for about 9 months now, and she is just terrific. And you'll be seeing a lot more of her beginning in about 2 minutes and extending throughout the 2 days of the retreat. Some of you may wonder how it is that the Institute of Politics possibly survived after Terry departed and before Sam came to bring in reinforcements. And you might wonder even more about that when I say that for big slices of that period, we were not just down 1 person, we were down 2. So our hardy little band of 6 became a fatigued band of 4. I sometimes thought to myself, well, Mark, it's just you and the kids. And I'm sure they were thinking to themselves, I wonder how long we've got to carry this old man before reinforcements do arrive. but we did it, and it is a real tribute to them. I do want to single out in particular the hardy band of three, some of whom at least are hiding in the back there. They include Brianna Mihawk, a senior policy strategist, Aaron Lauer, a senior policy analyst. I don't know what the difference is between those two titles, but Terry gave them different titles, so we're sticking with that. And Meredith Mavaro, who is the manager of student programs and community outreach, which means that a lot of her work is devoted to the mission of the Elsie Hillman Forum, which is a part of the Institute and which is very student-focused. Also in the back are Kim Carson, the program administrator from the Thornburg Forum for Law and Public Policy, which we moved into the Institute during the winter months. Melissa Pencrott, who now serves as the executive assistant to Provost Emeritus Marr and me, and Stephen Jarrett, a talented writer who takes on projects on a part-time basis for us. I'm not sure when we'll have a chance to thank this gang again, so I'd like to do it right now. They really have done a great job. If the recent history of the Institute has been characterized by short-term personnel changes, it may be less obvious that on the programmatic side, what we do really is characterized by high levels of constancy and long-term commitments. And often those long-term commitments have been born through the discussions generated in the annual retreat. Let me give just a few examples. First, I mentioned that just yesterday we released the second report of the Criminal Justice Reform Progress Panel. That panel is monitoring the progress that is or is not being made to implement the recommendations of a much larger task force on criminal justice that was appointed by County Executive Fitzgerald really in the immediate aftermath of our 2015 retreat, half of which did focus on incarceration. We also had a very sustained commitment to the opioid public health crisis, our work in that area, all of which can be traced to a partnership with the United States Attorney's Office when Dave Hickton led it, resulted in the development of a continuum of care plan for the region. It resulted in the publication of a journal of or an issue of the journal Commonwealth that is directed to public policy makers in Pennsylvania and that was written and edited here at the University of Pittsburgh. And it even resulted in a report assessing the university's own policies and procedures as they related to students and opioids. The topic for this year's retreat, Forging Our Future Together, addressing urban and rural needs to build a stronger region, also is tied to an earlier retreat. In September of 2016, we devoted half of our retreat to a discussion of poverty. The leaders of that discussion and the leaders of the work that led to that discussion were Dave Reed, then the Republican Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, and Dan Frankel, then the leader of the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives. It was a moving discussion in part because of what Dave had to say about his own experiences with poverty. But it was an uplifting discussion too, because it created the feeling as if we're all in it together. It wasn't the cities pointing at the rural areas and the rural areas pointing at the cities. Instead, if I can paraphrase our good friend Bill Strickland, poverty is debilitating. It doesn't matter whether you're in the city or you're in a rural area. If you're poor, that's a bad thing. And so the policy publication resulting from the effort that was led by Dave and Dan, a publication that was written by Aaron Lauer under the guidance of Mo Coleman, said that some of the key challenges to overcoming poverty, whatever your geography, were education, housing, economic inequality, and transportation. Now, how you address those challenges may be very different depending upon where you're seated geographically. The most obvious example is transportation. The options that are available to people to get to and from work vary pretty dramatically whether you're in the center of a city or you're in a suburb or you're in a rural area. But particularly here in Pennsylvania, we also might say that education presents somewhat different sets of problems. There is a widely shared view, if I can speak in the kind of stereotypes that I know our keynoters will avoid, that the basic education offerings in the urban core are not measuring up. It also is a fact that if you look at the counties of the northern tier of Pennsylvania, post-secondary higher education opportunities have been few and far between, an issue that is now being addressed through an initiative that was supported very heavily by Senator Scarnati and that also has been supported by the University of Pittsburgh. So one of our general starting points was a recognition that people are struggling everywhere, and we ought to be doing what we can to help them wherever they may be. Another was the knowledge that income gaps and wealth gaps and opportunity gaps are growing, and that's not good for any of us either. If people don't sense hope for themselves, or even worse, if they don't have hope for their children, there is no reason to believe that they are going to remain loyal to any kind of government structure or system of community structure. That clearly is not in our collective best interests. So once we had talked through some of these general themes, Samantha really swung into action. She recruited a group of really outstanding keynote speakers. And so I would like to invite to the podium now the veteran of 9 months as director of the Institute of Politics and someone you already know as an accomplished leader, Samantha Balbier, who will offer some words and introduce our first speaker. Sam?